up. Right, the question as to whether we should raise the speed limits here in the UK on motorways and dual carriageways to 80 miles per hour. It keeps popping up every few years and it's with us again. Before we start that, I'd just like to say that Motor and Customs, obviously their Black Friday discount ended yesterday, well, it's yesterday for me, it'll be day before yesterday for you by the time this video is published. The Black Friday discount code ran out. It has been replaced now with a new code which you'll find in the video description down below. So that's a discount code for all viewers of this channel for any Motorn product or products from Motorn's official UK website. I'll leave the details in the video description down below. Now, although it takes about 4 years for contractors to build a roundabout these days, back in the 1960s, after World War II, there was a major sort of revamp of UK roads and the introduction of motorways. I think they built something like 123 miles of motorway, including roundabouts, underpasses and bridges, in some 19 months. Now, not a lot of people know this, but these were actually a military initiative post-war. They realised that during World War II, transport of troops and weapons, etc., was not as efficient as it could be. So the main strategy for motorways was actually, for future conflicts, for easy, quick, efficient movement of troops and machinery between key strategic destinations and ports, with the added bonus that the civilian population could use them during times of peace. Now, the introduction of the motorways during the early 1960s actually proved to be a huge advantage to our economy. They allowed the very fast and efficient transport of goods between cities and ports, and they actually proved to be instrumental in dragging the UK out of the doldrums of austerity caused by World War II and into a new age of prosperity. Initially, there were no speed limits on these motorways. The speed limit was as fast as you wanted or you were capable of travelling, and this caused some problems with accidents. The first few years of motorway use were carnage, and I think a lot of things played into this. One was inexperience of drivers travelling at those sort of speeds, the vehicle technology of the times, tyre technology, brake technology, and of course, let's not forget, corrosion inhibition on vehicles then was terrible, so vehicles could get into quite a state within 2 or 3 years from new, often leading to early component failure under high stress situations. So in late 1965, as a temporary trial, the 70 mile an hour speed limit was introduced for motorways and dual carriageways. This was considered to be so successful in reducing motorway accidents that in 1967 it was made permanent, and we've been stuck with it ever since. Now, the thing is, motor vehicle technology has come a long way since the 1960s. Cars are much safer. Most of them now have a lot of safety aids built into them. Tyre technology is better, braking technology is better, and corrosion is not the problem that it used to be. So in 2011, it was suggested that the speed limit should be raised to match many countries in Europe at 80 miles an hour. Now, the reason this suggestion came up at the time is that it was estimated by just increasing the speed limits by 10 miles an hour on motorways would greatly shorten travelling times, and it would add many hundreds of millions of pounds to our economy each year just by making, travel more efficient. And this suggestion actually got a long way through Parliament at the time, but was eventually shouted down by the sort of nanny state membership of government that thought it's better to keep motorists safe by making them travel slower, and of course the tree huggers, the Greens, who said that this would lead to more environmental damage through emissions. I think it was Grant Shapps in 2019 tried again with the advent of the sort of reintroduction of the electric car, which basically shot down any argument that the Greens had about environmental damage. Although I should point out that politicians then, as now, didn't have a firm grasp on the dynamics of electric cars. So the intricacies of emissions from tyre wear, tyre particulates, were not fully understood at the time. Research for that came later. Nor was the fact that the faster electric vehicles go, the less efficient they become, and the more frequently they're required to be refueled or recharged. Now, this bid for raising motorway speeds, I don't really know where it would have gone. I think the pandemic basically got in the way of that, and it seemed to just fizzle out and die a death. But more recently, this year, the question's been raised again as to whether we should change the motorway speeds to 80 miles an hour. Now, I've driven extensively on the European continent. I think the speed limits there equate to about 82 miles an hour, and to be honest, I've never felt safer on a motorway. I think a lot of it is down to driver behaviour in the continental countries that I've driven in. I've not driven in every continental country, but I just found it a very safe and pleasant experience travelling at those speeds, compared to travelling at 70 miles an hour here in the UK. And as I say, a lot of it I think has to do with driver attitudes and discipline. And I have mooted to myself in the past that it could be the heightened awareness of travelling at 80 miles an hour that does lead drivers to behave a little bit more sensibly. But, as I say, it's just a sort of thought that's gone around in my head. I've got nothing to back that up. Now, this year in 2025, a comprehensive independent survey has been carried out as to the viability of changing the speed limit to 80 miles an hour. The survey was carried out by ChooseMyCar.com, and the results were published last month, and it makes quite interesting reading. I'll see if I can find a link, and I'll leave it in the video description down below. This has prompted a government petition, which again, I'll see if I can find a link to that in case you want to put your name on it, and I'll leave that in the video description down below. Now, this petition will run for 6 months and it finishes in March 2026. Now, this survey suggests that 43% of motorists interviewed say that the current 70 miles per hour speed limit is outdated with modern vehicle technology and should be raised to 80 miles an hour. Now, as you know, I'm not a speed freak. I'm quite happy with the 70 mile an hour limit. I will often travel slower if I think the traffic conditions dictate that I should. But I can see the merit in this for our economy, as it's been proven in the past with studies that have been carried out previously. It can give a boost to our economy in the order of hundreds of millions of pounds, and could have a positive effect on this current sort of cost of living crisis that we're having. Modern vehicles and the technology incorporated into them are light years ahead of what they were 60 years ago. Vehicle stability and ABS, braking technology, tyre technology and suspension technology have cut braking distances at 70 miles an hour by half since 1965. And that alone provides a very strong argument that the current speed limits are outdated. But there's more than that. Collision avoidance control, something that my last two vehicles have had. If I get too close to following a vehicle in front of me, initially it will just warn me. If I ignore it, it will put the brakes on, and it will even steer out of the way of the vehicle in front if it thinks there's going to be a collision. We've also got lane assistance that keeps the vehicle in lane if it starts to stray from the lane, should the driver be distracted in any way or fall asleep. We've even got warning systems that monitor the driver to make sure that he stays awake and is alert, and warns him if it thinks he might be dropping off. Now, those are just the systems that my last two vehicles have had incorporated into them. I'm sure that there is a whole wealth of other systems available from other manufacturers, and I know that although they're not foolproof and they're not incorporated into every vehicle, you know, they are a major leap forward in road safety that, to my mind, further sort of enhances the argument that 70 miles an hour is now outdated. And it is severely denting the argument that keeping the speed limits down is about safety. I mean, after all, you know, looking at some of the other countries that have an 80 mile an hour or even higher speed limits on the dual carriageways or motorways, their accident statistics are not much different from ours. I think what we've got to consider is that although politicians routinely default to the speed limits being the reason that accidents have reduced by 75% since 1965, it's actually vehicle technology that has been a major influence on those statistics. Although accident statistics did immediately drop when those speed limits were introduced, they didn't drop to 75%. That has been a gradual decline as motor vehicle technology has sort of improved in the decades since. Now, it seems to me in recent years that just about any subject, it always seems to be the environmentalists that have the biggest say, the final say, whenever it comes to subjects like this. And I, for one, am sick of it. Certainly on the last occasion that this subject cropped up with the government, their argument was that the environmental damage caused by travelling 10 miles an hour faster than we currently do far outweighs the economic benefits. And really, just this one topic is a prime example of how environmentalists and their push for net zero has brought this country financially to its knees. Don't get me wrong, I care about this planet and I'm all for doing what we can to lessen our influence or negative influence on the balance of things, but all species on this planet put a strain on the environment. Ours is probably bigger than most, but I don't really believe that you should push millions of people into poverty in pursuit of it. That's going to have the opposite effect, because people in poverty don't have time to care about the environment and it would affect it in other ways. These people are now wielding way too much power, and personally I think it's time we told them to shut up and show them the door. So this question is once again up for grabs. You know, it's been put out there, should we increase the speed limits? Personally, I don't have a problem with it. I would like to hear other people's thoughts on the subject. Bearing in mind what I've said, you know, don't just stick to misconceptions that have been fed to you in the past. Think about what I've said in this video. Now, personally, despite the evidence to suggest that it probably is a good idea to raise it now, I don't think we're going to see it, especially not with our current government, even with our last government. I think it's going to require a government whose ideology does not lie in net zero before we'll see a change in this department. And not for the reasons you might think. I don't think internal combustion engines travelling, 10 miles an hour faster are going to have that much of an impact on the environment. Putting to one side small vehicles that are designed for in-city travel, most vehicles nowadays are sort of designed and tuned to work optimally at those sort of speeds. What I do think is going to have an impact is electric vehicles. Now, don't forget, we're getting these shoved down our throats, and if they get their own way, these are going to be mainstream come 2030. The problem is These vehicles are not very efficient at travelling at high speed. The faster they travel, the more energy they use, and the more quickly they need to be refueled or recharged. That is going to put an enormous strain on our recharging infrastructure, which, let's face it, already is years behind. Now, the politicians and the environmentalists are never going to admit to this, because it shows up just another fault, another problem, another flaw that they don't want to admit exists. The faster electric vehicles go, the more the range is impacted. And since the pandemic, when all this madness started, that's when we've actually started to see speed limits being dropped everywhere, not increased. And that's the direction that they want to take us in, not for safety, although that is what they'll quote it's for. It's to protect the infrastructure around charging electric vehicles. If you make traffic travel slower, there's less demand on the national grid and the charging infrastructure. Now, the other bugbear as well with this whole phenomenon of increasing motorway speeds is part of this survey, I think it was 29% of people polled said that they already routinely travel at up to 80 miles an hour anyway. So, of course, one of the big arguments put forward is that, well, if we raise the speed limits to 80 miles an hour, everybody will be travelling at 90 miles an hour. And that would be really unsafe, so we can't increase it to 80 miles an hour. But, I mean, are they routinely travelling at 80 miles an hour? Or almost 80 miles an hour? I don't think they are. They may routinely travel at an indicated 80 miles an hour, or 79 or 78 miles an hour. But as we all know, manufacturers of motor vehicles routinely calibrate their speedometers to register a speed that's 10% higher than you're actually travelling, and they do this for legal reasons. So if you're travelling at an indicated 70 miles an hour, you're actually only travelling at somewhere between the sort of lower to mid 60s. And likewise, if you're travelling at an indicated 80 miles an hour or just below, you're only just going over 70 miles an hour. Now, I first discovered this back in the 1980s, and nothing has changed. When I was driving traffic cars, it didn't matter whether you were driving a Range Rover, a BMW, a Vauxhall or a Ford. They all had to be fitted with a secondary calibrated speedometer, and the onboard speedometer, the one that came with the car, always registered 10% lower than the calibrated one. Now, the reason that manufacturers do this with the OEM speedometers is to avoid people suing them when they get caught speeding. If the manufacturer can prove in court that the speedo is registering 10% faster than the speed that the vehicle's actually travelling at, it then demonstrates to a court that the driver was intentionally speeding and it wasn't due to the error of the speedometer. And they've been doing that for well over half a century. Now, as far as I'm concerned, they're still doing it that way, and it seriously weakens the argument that some proponents put forward that, you know, if you move the speed limits to 80 miles an hour, people push it to 90. They won't. They'll be just going over 80. Right, so let me know what you think about this subject. Just a word to the wise, I don't tolerate confrontational and rude comments. Once again, thanks for watching. I am of course going to be back on Friday, so until then, if you're riding, ride safely, and I'll see you soon.